I said no, hey, yeah. Hey, hey, yeah. I said no, hey, yeah,
Hi,
yeah.
my name is Matt
Hey,
Gresick. Welcome to
well,
another
come
episode
on,
of Brick
everybody,
and
take it.
Mortar Education from the Inside Out. With me, as
I'm Eric
always.
Ebersole, your host along with Matt. I'm a state legislator here in Maryland, but also an educator for a long, long time. And we're happy to be back. And today we have what I would call a topical interview. Okay. We have Will Page
Yes,
from the state of California. And if you've been paying attention, you know what's going on in California.
yes, and particularly LA. He's a good friend I met through the NEA, and I'm just going to let him just tell us who he is and why did he choose to have his life revolve around education. Go ahead, Will.
All right, Matt, Eric, thank you so much. Pleasure joining you and your listeners today. So my name is Will Page. I am a middle school educator, mostly sixth grade math, social studies, and I actually do teach a climate change in Los Angeles class. I have been an educator now for, I think this is year 17 or 18. I can never remember which one it is. You know, you get into the higher teens and it all starts to blend together. I think I'll have it
Your
together when I get
therapist
to
can
your
sometimes talk you into blending those together too, right?
right. But I teach in Los Angeles, have my entire career, born and raised in Los Angeles, left for a little while to do some other things. But education was always one of those things I knew I was going to go into, even if I tried to fight it for a little while. My mom, after she had worked for, when I was young, she had worked for Pacific Bell and then AT&T. When she was laid off, when I was, I believe, 11, she went back, got her teaching credential through Cal State Los Angeles, and became a teacher. I believe, I think she started on an emergency credential in LAUSD in 1989, and that same year she went on strike.
Wow.
And it was kind of interesting to see, my mom is a brand new teacher, going on strike, and we really couldn't afford it. My father had died the year before, and it was kind of but one of those things where I had seen her go on strike as part of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers when I was 4. And so I knew that this was something that was important to her, even though it was, she was new and she was scared that, she would not have a job to come back to. Um, that was one of those, foundational moments. And I realized how important it was for her, even though she was new to the career. My father was a parent rep at my school site in elementary school. And so I knew how important it was for him. He always kind of like handpicked my teachers at the school.
Hmm.
And so I got to see what quality educators look like. And, I was always viewed education, and especially on the teaching side of things, with a very discerning eye. And, I realized I was analyzing, I look back on it now and realize I was analyzing pedagogy as like a
Mhm.
middle schooler,
Huh.
and
That's great, man.
starting to look at the way the power that an educator could have, both positively and negatively, and learn from those experiences, knowing that I'd eventually go into education.
Yeah.
Like I said, I did resist it for a while, and when I finally made it in, I have not looked back, and have continued to grow as both an educator and now also as a union activist.
Well, are you subject area specific in middle school?
No, no. So I do have a single subject English credential.
Well,
Uh,
good. Because
but
Matt, social
I,
studies and I'm math, and we always argue about it. What's better?
yeah,
And you're in the
I,
middle there, man. You're
yeah, I
great.
utilize my multiple subject credential though.
Nice.
I can teach anything from K to eighth grade technically, as long as I'm teaching 2 core subjects.
We're agog. I speak for Matt when I say we're agog that you're teaching middle school because we're both high school teachers and we're
Uh, I,
stunned. My
yeah,
my my daughter teaches middle school too, and I'm like, what?
I did teach it for
yeah.
2.5 years, though.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
but you're not there anymore, are you? I
I think at some point I think in the sunset of my career, I would really like to go down to elementary.
Ah,
Um,
good for you.
that
That's
was that I actually came into the with the idea of being like a third, fourth, or fifth grade
well,
educator.
I mean, honestly, I mean, not to cast shade, but we need more male models at the middle school, at the elementary school level,
Elementary.
to be
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, it doesn't attract as many male teachers, and if you're interested in that, I give you my check mark of approval on that one.
It'll happen one of these days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
well,
so Eric, do
great.
you want to ask the next question?
Well, I don't know. Do we have a next question? I like
Yeah.
to think that they just come naturally, that we
Oh,
don't really have them lined up or
yeah,
anything.
right.
That they're not written down here or
We're
anything
so
like that.
fluid.
Right. So,
Uh,
so tell us, it's fun to hear educators who've been in for a while. What's a difficult or challenging moment or a funny moment that they remember when they think about their teaching time and, how it might have, shaped some stuff for them, but also why it sticks out. Like something like a cool event.
Yeah, there's, you get this deep into your career. There's so many different things that have
Yes.
happened that it's tough to sort of like isolate one. But I do have one that was kind of formative from my first year teaching, actually. And
Oh,
it's
the best year. That's the most productive year, isn't it?
Uh, but so I had I this is one of those moments in my career that I always look back on, and it turned me into a much better history teacher. So in sixth grade in California, our standards are focused around ancient civilizations and geography of the ancient world. So we're focusing on Mesopotamia, Egypt, ancient Israel, the Indus River Valley civilization, ancient China, Greece, Rome. And we teach it unit by unit based on the civilization. And we then have, geography, religion, arts and architecture, religion, economics, and politics that we have as like sort of like the strands within each of those. And I was teaching, this was toward the end of the year, and I was teaching the Rome unit. And this girl in class, and I had two funny incidents with her. So I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna call back another one with her in a minute here. But this kid, I'll never forget, her name was Francia. And and early in the year, we're going through and we're talking about the Egyptians and they're like the art and architecture. And she looks at me and very seriously goes, "Mr. Page, what did the Egyptians watch on TV?" And
Oh my God.
and so it was one of those things where I had to like pause and like compose myself so I wouldn't embarrass her, because again, the power
They
of a
didn't
teacher.
watch Severance? Are you pretty sure they didn't watch Severance? So,
Right. And so I had to gently explain to her, that television was invented, not long before I was born, and that we're talking about people who lived, you know, thousands of years ago. And it then came to me that there wasn't really, for an 11-year-old, there wasn't really the perception of time and place, no matter, what I was using to help get them there. And then at the end of the year, we're working on the Romans, and you got the Roman Empire, and going from republic to empire, and you got the conquest starting, and it's Cleopatra's story, and Francia looks at me again and goes, "No, no, 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 Mr. Page, no, Mr. Page. There cannot have been the Romans and the Egyptians having civilization at the same time because we studied the Egyptians in October and it is May, and that's not how history
those
works."
civilizations were clearly several months apart in history.
So it was just one of those things where I'll never forget Francia just for sort of like remembering that I have to always be sort of clear with kids on the time period that they're working in, and the differences between our lives now in the 21st century versus going back 5, 6, 7 millennia, and how different, and how that said, how similar the lives of our great grandparents were to people 5,000 years ago compared to our lives now.
No.
Well, I'm going to call you out. That sounds suspicious like a social studies unit. Okay.
I love the story. I thought it
Yeah,
was
I
a
bet you
fantastic story,
do.
Will.
I bet you do. So there was no unit on the San Joaquin Valley, I suppose, at that time in your class. Was that correct?
Well, they would have learned about that before, but the year before.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, that's a fun story because it does point to how we make assumptions about what kids, their perspective on things, and how we have to remember that their perspective is much shorter than ours. So that's cool. That's a cool story. It's a really cool story. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, that's yeah, it's just a great story. And I mean, looking at your background, I know a lot of our listeners can't see it. It looks as if you are in a hotel room right now, Will.
Yes, I
Um,
am.
and
Why
so
are you in a hotel room? Well,
that brings
please
us to the topic of the
tell us,
day.
won't you please?
Yeah, I'm
You
actually.
don't live in a hotel room your entire life, right?
There's time periods, especially doing union work that I feel like I live in a hotel room. But I have been in a hotel room for the last 22 days,
Oh my God.
along with
Okay, so
my
now we're
wife.
going to stop smiling at this point.
Yeah,
Okay.
along with my wife, our 13-year-old daughter, our two cats, and then behind me is our bearded dragon. We're here at the Embassy Suites in Glendale, California, where luckily our insurance company was able to get us a spot because we are currently evacuees who are from the Eaton fire that just devastated my community of Altadena, Pasadena. And so our house is still standing. We're lucky in that aspect.
We're happy to hear that.
Yeah, but we have an immense amount of smoke damage. I'll actually be meeting with a company tomorrow who's going to hopefully get started on the remediation soon to get us back into our home sooner than
While
later.
you're planning for your classes still, right? You're
Yeah,
doing
absolutely. No, absolutely. There's been no stop to this, but it was um one of this is one of those moments that I will always have in my life because Altadena and Pasadena are intertwined communities. Pasadena is a city just outside of Los Angeles, for listeners who don't know. We have about 134,000 residents. And then Altadena is unincorporated part of Los Angeles County. And so you go from my house up 3 blocks, there's a cluster of 10 houses that are gone.
uh,
And then you go up 2 blocks after that, and the next 2.5 miles are gone. And that's not hyperbole. It's literally two
so
and a half.
in a weird way, you count yourself as lucky.
I mean, yes,
And in a sort of
but
backwards kind of way, right?
yeah, I mean, luckily that our home is still standing. We don't need to go through the process of rebuilding. We don't need to go through the process of, I mean, because everybody's underinsured, to be honest. So we don't have to take out another loan to go through that process. We don't have to live in a construction zone on our block. But the one of the beautiful things about Altadena, especially, and I can't really talk on the Palisades fire too much. I've been while that has affected our students and educators within Los Angeles, I've really been focused on my community. We
As you
lost.
should be, for
Yeah,
sure.
so just for perspective, between both fires, there are currently about 125,000 people who are evacuees.
Okay.
And I liken us to almost being climate refugees in a weird way. There's in Altadena, Pasadena, over 9,000 single family homes burned to the ground.
My God.
Another 300 or 400 multi-unit complexes or duplexes burned. There's 4 schools that are community institutions just gone. One being the linchpin public middle school, Elliott Middle School, Elliott Arts Magnet Middle School, which is part of Pasadena Unified. Um, the kids in Pasadena are just gotten back to school. They started back the 29th of January. We started back to school on January 7th. I'm sorry, January 6th, which was the Monday. January 7th was when the wind started kicking up. I got a call. I was in the middle of professional development at school. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I had actually taught. Let me backtrack. It's all kind of jumbled right
You're
now,
doing
but
great, man. Stick with it.
I mentioned earlier I do teach a climate change class, and I was actually in the second day with my students. And one of the prompts that I had for them to just sort of get them thinking, and remember, these are 11, 12-year-old kids. And the prompt was, how has climate change affected you in Los Angeles?
My God, I laugh, but not in a funny way. In a
Yeah,
nervous
no, and so,
Wow.
the kids really didn't have much to bring to the table. And then this one kid, Eduardo, he raises his hand and he says, well, we have wildfires. And I was like, all right, I was like, good job, Eduardo. I was like, can you tell us a little more about that? And he was like, talking about my school is very near Griffith Park, which is where the world famous Griffith Observatory is. I can actually see the observatory from my classroom. And, he was talking about a fire that occurred there 4 years ago. And, I was like, okay, great. That's great. And I said, we're having this massive wind event over the next few days. I'm going to be really surprised if we don't have a fire that breaks out. And this is about 9:20 in the morning when I say this.
How prophetic, man.
About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I get a text message that says, hey, check the news, the Palisades is burning. And I was like, and I couldn't wrap my head around what that meant. And so immediately I, popped on and threw it up on the screen because I have 5 kids who were in my climate change class in there. And I was like, hey guys, this is what I was just talking about, and let's make sure. And the event there, we have 3 schools in LAUSD that are gone now. Palisades Independent Charter, which is on the grounds of Palisades High, gone. We have 2 elementary schools gone. And then, unbeknownst to me, I just kind of wrap up my day. I get a call from my wife. Our fence is blowing over. She needs me to come help her. It's fallen into it. We built an outdoor office. It's fallen into the outdoor office. And so I grab my kid who goes to my middle school. We rush over to the hardware store, grab some rope so that we could just have our fence not go into the driveway of the apartment building behind us. And I took out a bunch of slats, grabbed my drill, took out a bunch of slats in the fence and just hope that it wouldn't blow over any further, and, thinking that that's all it's going to be, not a big deal. We're getting these 60, 70 mile an hour wind gust.
These are the infamous Santa Ana winds, which
Santa
were
Ana
famous at
winds.
one time, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're wicked winds. They really are. And they just come out of Utah through Nevada, pick up a bunch of dry air. Humidity in like the low single digits.
Mhm.
Yeah, so really
We had not had a drop of rain since May.
Yeah.
And about 20 minutes after 7, our next door neighbor sends a text message, hey, look up in the canyon. And from our house, we have a view right
So
into.
help people out. What is the canyon? Help
Okay,
them.
I was actually gonna.
Okay,
So
good. You're on it already.
from my house, we have a view right into Eaton Canyon, which is where
Okay.
the Eaton
Which is
fire.
why it's called the Eden Fire.
Exactly. Oftentimes we name our fires after locations in
Yeah.
the
I just
area.
to
So,
help people who, live here on
oh yeah,
the
yeah,
coast.
absolutely. So Eaton Canyon is just a wonderful little part of our area where great hiking, natural resources, great little streams, a nature center. There's a little disc golf course. A, a a lady who owned a business that dealt with selling folks native plants so they could get rid of their grass and plant native gardens. Just a wonderful little part of our community. And up in the canyon, I looked up and it was already massive. It
Wow.
had started maybe 20, 30 minutes before. And our next door neighbors were like, is it going to come down here? We're like, no, 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 it won't make it down this far. And then all of a sudden, 15 minutes later, we see cars just streaming down our block, evacuating out of Altadena. And my wife and I start talking. We decide we're going to start watering down our yard and our roof. We get our other neighbors to start doing that as well. We've all been on a group chat for like 5, 6 years. We're all tight. About 9 o'clock, we're starting to pack up because I mean it's been at this point an hour and a half of traffic coming down our block. We see the fire getting closer and closer. It's clearly burning. We're getting reports of the synagogue that had burned in on Altadena Drive. We're getting reports of a I'm sorry, an elder care residential facility that is
This
evacuated.
information comes into you how? How do you get this?
Whether it was like TV news or
Or
whether it
people texting each
text
other?
messages next
Okay.
door, all sorts of, and just trying to stay abreast. On my street, all of a sudden, three houses up, I hear a crash, and then I hear someone screaming for my neighbor Rudy. Run out. I can't see because we have a hedge blocking, but I run over, and there is a magnolia tree that has fallen down on our block. And again, we have all these people trying to escape out of Altadena. Uh, she's screaming for Rudy. We think he's under the tree,
Oh my
dragging the
God.
tree off. Rudy comes sauntering around the block, so that was kind of like a happy story within
Thank
it.
God.
He's like, "Oh, I was just watching the fire." We're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
man, help us with the tree."
Dude, help us.
So we get the tree out of the street so people could evacuate and go back to our lives trying to like get stuff together, the essentials that we would need if we were called to evacuate. The three of us and our cats are looking at us like we're crazy. We had to gather up the tortoises, not knowing we have two tortoises that are in hibernation. So we had to gather them, not knowing what was gonna happen for us. So luckily, my good friend Robert, who lives in Burbank, he and his wife said, "Hey, if you guys need to come in, come on over. No big deal."
There's a whole thing about what you grab in that situation.
Oh yeah, without a
like
doubt.
photo albums
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like birth certificates and stuff
Yep.
like that.
All the essential documents, which we have. We actually have a fireproof case that already has
I
all
think
the
people
stuff
on
in
the
it.
East Coast should start thinking about that. I
Yeah,
really do. We feel a little safer here because
yeah,
we're not as volatile in terms of things. We get some hurricanes and things, but
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, so this is not. This has never happened.
Yeah.
And it's not like this
yeah.
has never happened.
But you have earthquakes. Do you think
we were
about it in that? You have
Yeah, I
those.
mean, earthquakes, you can adjust for those sort of things, right?
Okay.
But with something like this, we've always had fires in the foothills,
It's on
but,
you though.
but we've never had them sustained by 100-mile-an-hour gust,
Yeah.
sending embers miles and miles away.
Yeah.
And so this was an event that I imagine going back to teaching history, I imagine it's what residents of Pompeii must have felt like,
Yeah.
having to flee and not knowing where to go.
That was your perspective, is
Well,
just
you're watching an entire
Yeah.
mountainside just burn.
well, it's difficult for us to imagine, but you're painting a pretty good picture here, I have to tell
Well,
you.
it was horrific.
Yeah.
It was, and then we escape over to our friend's house over in Burbank the next morning because we got the evacuation to leave our place. There's this app called Watch Duty that everybody in Southern California downloaded that night. And you keep
That
an
night,
eye on it.
right?
Yeah, you keep an eye on it to figure out whether your zone is what stage of evacuation you're in.
Mhm.
And about 4:30 in the morning, we had to flee. And the first thing we did was grab the tortoises, put them in their box, start to gather up the cats, and one of them had no desire to go. We already had the cars loaded with.
You think a cat would be smarter and go
No,
with
no.
you, wouldn't you?
Oh, cat.
She was having
I have
none
a
of it.
cat. He's not very smart.
I have a cat.
So then, we get what was crazy, like we left and it was pitch black, and I think Matt, you probably saw the picture of the sunrise that I sent. It was eerie. And then we get into Burbank and it's funny because like you look behind us and there's completely black skies, and in Burbank, blue Southern California, gorgeous skies.
Everything's cool.
You wouldn't know anything was going on.
Huh.
And at the time, basically the people who fled those two fires in a 24-hour period was the number of people who live in like Birmingham, Alabama, or Chandler, Arizona. I mean, we're talking about a massive amount of people who just got up and went.
Was everybody pretty cool about going there? Like, there's traffic and things like that. And I mean, how did that go? Did that go okay? Or
yeah,
people in a panic, behave
it
differently.
seemed like everybody had their shit together. Excuse my language.
No, it's
No,
okay.
it's okay.
We're not on network or anything.
But it really did seem like everybody was just single-minded. Hey, we got to get going. And there was when we were leaving, everybody just seemed to be working in unison. And there was no coordination at all,
It's great though that people pull together. I mean, it
yeah,
really,
without a doubt, without a doubt. And so then, slowly over the course of the next few days, so obviously I didn't go to work that day. Our superintendent was used.
what? You left the education of our youth?
Well, and the thing is, my partner
How
teacher,
could you, sir?
well, my partner teacher, she lives in Altadena. And so we were both in a situation where
Oh,
our
yes,
kids
of
were without
course.
us. In my magnet, in sixth grade, there were five of the six of us who couldn't make it into work.
Yeah.
And so, about half the kids came to school that day. The superintendent was going by air quality data, but principals on the ground are saying, "Hey, we need to close the schools," and he's going, "Oh, well, the index says we don't have
Oh
to."
my
And
God.
it's like if you're not listening to the people on the ground, and they're fearful of making a call that they need to make in order for the safety of their students and their communities, then you're not doing your job right.
Move in and do it right. I
Right?
mean, we have lesser things where we have snow here, and sometimes they're reluctant, but they go in. But
Yeah.
this is even, that's danger in driving on the road, which is real, but not as imminent as what you're talking about,
Yeah,
too.
without a doubt. And so they closed the schools they ended up closing most of the schools midday on Wednesday. So then you have parents all across the district scrambling to get their kids.
Right.
Because
Right.
if you think about the amount of, like, if it's a forest fire, that's one thing, but these are 125-year-old, 100-year-old homes that are burning. There's
Not built to resist fire necessarily, right?
no, well,
They'll go up like a
and
matchstick, won't
with
they?
lead paint, you
Right.
got cars that are
I hadn't
burning.
thought of that.
Yeah.
The metals, the alloys, the lithium batteries that are burning from because we have a lot of EVs out here. So you got
Hey, I
EVs
have
that
an EV, Will. I just want you to
nice.
know.
All right.
Even here on the East Coast, I
Hey,
got
I don't see them too often when I'm out there. So good job, Eric.
Uh,
Um, you know, but the amount of toxins that are in the air and in the community now is just pretty overwhelming.
So, the thing my daughter said to me is, you're going to send thoughts and prayers to somebody on Instagram who's having trouble like you, and you're going to send it again to somebody else who's having trouble like you. And then eventually
People forget.
you're going to be the one.
Yeah.
You're the living example of that. I'm feeling nice and comfy right here, right now, but we're due. Okay. We are due too, in maybe a very different way, or maybe the very same way. I don't think, we're not going to burn here, but that's a devastating story. And thank you
yeah.
for sharing every detail with it, of us with it. I think people here want to hear someone who is in it. I don't want to
Yeah.
say on the ground because that sounds like a reporter, but somebody who was in it telling us.
Well, I mean, going back and driving around, because I go back to the house every few days, pick up the mail, charge the car,
Bravo, sir. Bravo.
then go, like, when I've been able to get up into Altadena, it's horrific. It really is. What was beautiful about Altadena, it was one of the very few parts of Los Angeles that were not redlined. So
Okay.
for your listeners who don't know what redlining is,
Yeah, yes.
for the sake of
Hopefully our
time,
listeners do, but go ahead.
I would hope so, but do some research on redlining in Los Angeles specifically.
Baltimore is a hot
Yeah,
spot for
oh,
redlining. Let's just say that.
for us here, Altadena was one of the very few communities that wasn't redlined. And so you had generational wealth that Black folk, brown folk had in the neighborhood.
Because they could access it because it
Yeah,
wasn't redlined.
exactly. Because
Just real quickly, redlining was a way of keeping races from gaining generational wealth by acquiring property. We'll leave it at that. Okay. Just in case anybody's not clear on it. Look it up on your Google there, friends.
But we're at a point now where it's in recovery. And it's natural disasters happen and people are going to forget about them except the people who are dealing with them.
Yeah.
But we're talking, if you're looking at, like, Patterson, New Jersey, right, which is a pretty good sized town. That's how many people are not back in our homes yet.
Yeah.
That's a significant number of people. If you're, how many people live in Baltimore? About 600,000?
Yeah, well, in the city,
Yeah,
the city
so that's like
tight geopolitical lines. There's about
so
a million people in this area.
okay, so like a quarter of Baltimore City right?
Yeah.
You know, 15, 15,
That's
20% of your
Matt
county.
and I live in Baltimore County, so we'll say because it's about 700,000, about a third of Baltimore County. How's
Also,
that?
all of Howard County. That would be all of Howard County.
All of the next county over,
Yeah.
exactly.
So you know, in perspective, and the thing is, we're talking in an area between in both areas. If you're looking at both burn areas, it's about maybe 17 square miles.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So not a massive amount of land.
And you know, you live in a different area and you have different vulnerabilities, but you're us, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, it's coming and we have to pay attention. I'm a little worried about, you know, some of the concessions that are being made nationally, federally. So, you know,
Well,
the lack of recognition that's coming from the current administration. God, I can't believe I'm saying that it's the current administration with regard to climate change. So there you go.
And on top of that, simple things like FEMA, you know, where our dollars for FEMA are being tied to political agendas.
Yes.
I'm sorry, that's some
Go
bullshit.
all in. Don't hesitate
Well,
here. We're not
I mean,
afraid.
you know, it's funny because in California, you know, we don't sit here as a tornado or a freeze comes through Texas and go, oh, well, we don't like their policies out there with regard to women's reproductive rights. You know, no,
Yeah.
we send our love, we send what we need to. Hey, your kids need some backpacks. We'll get a drive going at our schools. You know, it has nothing to do with identity politics when Americans, when people are facing natural disasters, and where in a state where we, you know, like I look at how much we output compared to how much we get back. You know, I'm not when I hear a senator from Alabama talking about how, you know, we need to tie DEI strategies and get rid of DEI in California. We're not talking about that when a tornado cycle comes through Alabama, or you get a Gulf of Mexico, and
North
it's
Carolina
it is
gets
Gulf of
flooded, for
Mexico.
example. Right,
You
exactly.
get a Gulf of Mexico hurricane coming up. You know, we're not even thinking about things like that.
Okay, so adding a little levity to the situation, the Gulf of Mexico, is that what you're still going to call it that?
Oh, I'm making sure I'm calling it the Gulf of Mexico.
All right, so I don't know, Matt, how are we doing on time here?
We are hitting
Right at the end.
we're very close. I think
So what I think we need to do,
the mascot question.
I think what we need to do is tie this one up today. I'm gonna make it executive decision and invite Will back for another episode.
Okay. You want to do a two-part?
I think we need to invite him back for this is the condition in Southern California. We're gonna put this one up right away.
Yeah.
And then we're going to come back to you about what's going on in education relevant to this, but relevant to, you know, to California. And
if you don't mind,
I think you, sir, deserve another podcast with us if you're willing.
I'll gladly join you. If I could put one thing out for your listeners, if there is any way that people are always asking, what can we do? What can we do? How can we help? You know, if you're in a school community out there, you know, or you got a church group or whatever it is, go on to CTA.org. That's California Teachers Association. Yep. Go to CTA.org, and under our disaster relief, we actually have all the GoFundMes for families out here. You know, find a family that you can, you know, crowdsource some money for, or, you know, figure out what they need as they're trying to settle into temporary housing. That would make a massive impact, and
I'll put that into the descriptor.
So we're going to come back to you and get to you on education policy, okay? But you have laid out such a clear picture. I don't want to muddy the waters here. I want people to understand what you're up against. I want people to understand what climate change does to a very large community in Southern California.
This is Matt Gresick coming with you. We will continue this with another episode where we'll talk about education.
Yeah, we're so pleased. Will has been such a great guest, and he has told us so much about what's going on in California that we are going to come back and talk about the educational implications in a future episode. Thank you for being here with us. Will, thank you. We're going to see you again. Apparently, you have agreed to spend more time with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, we're out.